All right, well, let's get into episode 2 of House of Dragons. Is it? I still do this, dude.
House of the Dragons.
House of the Dragons.
Hang on. No. Is it House of the Dragons or House of the Dragon?
I think it's just Dragon.
I think you're right. Yeah, House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon.
But technically, it's Game of Thrones.
House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon.
Okay.
With the show.
So, a couple things. One, we're changing up the format for this. I am not doing B-roll again. It took forever, and we're not getting the it is not getting the numbers yet. Like, we are not big enough on YouTube for me to be spending that much time working on B-roll because I just don't feel as if it's being appreciated enough. It took a long time to edit that first one, and I cut a ton of our conversation out from it because it was going to be like 45 minutes. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm not doing 45 45-ish minutes of this trying to make everything fit in. So for whether you're listening or whether you're watching this, we're switching back to what we did for Halo. Now, I don't want to do a detailed breakdown of this. That was already a discussion that we had. I just don't. It's not that I don't see the point in it. It's more of I'd rather hit certain points about it, and then maybe at some point we'll do a stream and talk more about our overall feelings of the show, and maybe we can go into a little more detail about the season as a whole. So let's start with general thoughts of episode 2, and then I'll kind of scan through this a little bit. If there's something specific that you or I wanted to talk about, we can try to keep it in order of when it happened in the show as much as possible. And we'll go from there. So as tradition dictates, you get to go first.
Nice. Well, I thought episode 2 was really good.
Okay.
Slow burn. For sure.
Yeah.
Slow burn.
Maybe a
but
little
I
too
didn't
slow.
necessarily. Yeah, I would give you that. A little
Maybe
bit
a
too
little.
slow. I thought the editing could have been better, cutting out specific scenes to make it a little bit shorter of an episode. I think it just seems like these companies get bogged down by. I'm sure they felt the pressure of, hey, it needs to be this long, and we need to pad it out.
It's about 52-ish minutes.
Where I think the opposite way, less can be more.
Yeah.
And so I think if there's a little bit finer editing, cutting some things out, specific scenes, then it would have been a lot less slower. But my kind of sense I got from it was a good episode with it seemed that episode 1 was a majority of the setup, and then episode 2 was finishing what they didn't get to in episode 1. But I enjoyed the detail too in this episode. I think when they did the shot of the stone city of Valeria that the king has in his chambers.
Oh, that stuff is cool. Yeah. The little like set dressings and things like that they're doing.
It's really cool. And there's a shot though where there's spider webs on it. And it's just like, and you could dude, if I missed it. My wife had to point it out to me, right?
Yeah.
And we paused it, and I'm like, you freaking missed that. But that amount of detail comes through. I was watching Rhaenyra in the last episode, too. I didn't mention this, but she has the crest of all 7 houses or whatnot on her little, I don't know, collar thing, ribbon thing. And I thought that was interesting. I really enjoy just the detail in this show. It really comes across that they care, at least so far.
Someone working on the show cares about
yes
some of this stuff. Yeah,
the design, the sets, and you could definitely tell they love that freaking candle scene or the candle set.
I was actually going to mention that. That's probably aesthetically that's my favorite part of the episode. I was going back and kind of scanning through it again before we recorded this, and I was like, I'm so thankful that there are at least some people out there working on shows like this that still care about practical effects. Yes. Something as simple as real candles being lit and then the cinematographers...
And not CGI.
Yeah, they're using those candles to light the faces of the actresses in that scene. And I was like, it's so simple. I was like, but thank you.
Praise be to the candle maker.
Yeah.
Gods be good.
Yeah, I generally agree. I didn't like this episode quite as much as the last one.
Agreed.
I think it definitely starts off a little bit slow, and then until Damon shows up,
dude.
I'm telling you, every time Matt Smith is there, it's just like the show gets just a little bit better. Yeah, you're just like, oh, okay, I'm liking this a little bit more. I really like.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's just because of
his character is just good?
His character is good. His charisma, his just screen performance, the kind of, you don't really know which direction he can go.
He's more fleshed out than anybody else in the cast so far, too.
Yeah, keeps you on your toes.
Otto is relatively fleshed out. I think this episode he's shown more, and one of the things I really like about him is how subtle he is, and his this is the episode you kind of see it in the first episode. This is the one where you're really starting to see how manipulative he can be, but that he also,
and that duplicitous nature he has, that dichotomy there.
I think that Rhaenyra, I think, shown a lot more in this episode. I really like her actress. I think she's doing a really good job. Who knows what's going to happen when you get the time jump where it switches to actresses. That's the one thing I'm kind of I might have mentioned that in the last one. I'm a little worried about when they get to that point in the time jump that Alicent and Rhaenyra's actresses, their older versions, aren't going to be as good
as the younger versions.
Yeah, well, because you've built up this relationship with the younger versions of them, and then they're gone, and now you have the older versions, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess now we're going to have to figure out if we like this version of the character. And it's a dangerous...
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's interesting. It's dangerous because the show could potentially start to fall flat when two of your primary characters... And this is more of a possibility of this happening, but if they're not good, it's a big gamble to make, to have two actresses come in all of a sudden that you're like, this isn't working for me.
Hey, round of applause for the showrunners and the creators behind the show taking a big risk. I can't think of another series off the top of my head that's taken these kind of time jumps.
Sure.
When this episode came, we had to rewind it because we were like, did they just say it's been 6 months
about
since
6 months.
her death?
Dude, what a great,
wow, that's a big jump.
Dude, we've talked about this with The Witcher and how confusing the timeline is for that show, and this show shows you exactly how to do it.
Yep.
You're a character is having a conversation with someone, and they, of course, the husband would literally be keeping count of how long it's been since his wife dies, especially with how traumatic that was. Yeah.
Yes.
It works.
And if you've been through a loss like that, you understand why it's been 6 months, to the day.
Yeah.
And so it's really good storytelling. I think even if it doesn't pay off, the time jumps that they're going to do in this season and with this show seemingly, I at least applaud them for trying to be original.
Now,
and I think they're in a unique position because me personally, I wish they, I've heard some other people make this point, and we were making this point last week. I wish they would differentiate themselves and stay away from Game of Thrones as much as possible.
That's a great segue.
Go ahead.
That's a great segue because I got to mention this so I can scroll through this a little bit. One of the worst decisions they made was this intro.
The music, right?
It's it is the Game of Thrones scene. Honestly, I'm not really even into this whole Bloodlines set thing. It's a little on the nose. I get it. I don't think it's nearly as creative, and I'm just like, I when it started up and I heard the Game of Thrones music, I just laughed a little bit.
See, I don't mind the on the nose with how they chose to go about this.
Yeah.
It was the music for me. I was just like, it would be nice to have this show have its own distinctive music. Yes,
it should have its own intro. You throw a little remix in the middle of it of the original Game of Thrones thing, but to go this on the note, to just be we're just going to use that. Everyone loves that song. We'll just use that.
And on one hand, I understand in the sense of you're trying to kind of hey, remember when you really loved Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Come to us. You remember when you really hated Game of Thrones? Stay away.
Yeah. It's a
It's
weird
just trying to balance. They're in a difficult, I think, in a difficult situation, a unique situation. But I think it's better, in my opinion, for them to stand on their own 2 feet.
Make a House of the Dragon. Make a House of the Dragon theme.
It's that simple. Get the people who made the Game of Thrones deal.
Yeah. Maybe they'll learn from that. Maybe they'll take some of the criticism of, hey, like, why are you using this thing? Like, dude, it bugs me so much that they use the game of, like,
it really did.
It just bugs me. I can't get over the fact that it's like, it feels like a lazy decision.
It does. And my wife liked it, and I was just, I looked at her, and I was like,
fine.
Don't talk to me.
Listen, get your own theme.
Yes.
Differentiate yourself more.
That's what I was telling you last week. Yeah. I said I feel like they should differentiate themselves more than what they're doing. It's not that they're not differentiating themselves. It's just that not to where I think would make this show better, to where, hey, we're just standing on our own 2 feet on this. Yeah, there's some things we can draw people in. With Game of Thrones, get the normies in. But obviously, 10.2 million viewers for this episode, 10 million for the premiere. Obviously, normies.
Everybody's into it, man. Everybody who's watching it was the first episode was good enough that they wanted to bring back a second one. Okay, so
this scene reminded me of Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, this is pretty cool.
It is.
I really like sort of like the aesthetic and what they're setting up for this. I really hope that the guy that they're setting up sort of as the villain, that he's going to last longer than like one more episode, because they're supposed to have a big battle.
Like the Sandman.
Yeah, they're supposed to have a big battle in the next episode, and if it's just kind of over and they move on, I'm going to be a little annoyed.
I was kind of hoping that this second episode, I had one of the rumors was that it was going to be kind of like a background on Daemon. And it was just going to kind of focus on him, and I got let down when it wasn't.
I wouldn't be surprised if we get an episode later in this series about that. You got to be careful with those episodes, though. You know why?
Why's that?
Because usually when they do like retrospective, or introspective episodes, the character dies in that episode.
Oh yeah,
it's honestly, it's kind of an anime trope where they do that. The Walking Dead had a character gains a conscience, dies in that episode. And one of the other things that happens a lot is when they do an episode where they focus heavily on a character, and then that they're reminiscing and they're realizing the mistakes they've made in their lives.
Yeah.
Or like they're just having this like introspective thing. They usually get killed off in that episode. Yeah. So there's.
I will say this with Lord Corlys. What's his name?
Corlys.
I did enjoy the fact that they didn't do any tropes, but it's him getting looked over a bunch.
Yeah,
is due to him being a second son, kind of like Daemon. I thought that ending of the second episode was a good connection.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. You're jumping ahead a little bit. That's like the very
Just excited.
End.
But I enjoyed this scene. I think you're right. Hopefully he lasts more than just a couple episodes.
And we'll see. We'll see him at the end of the episode. The guy
crabs, man.
The crab man. It's nice too, because I think someone had mentioned this in the previous episode when I was watching some other people's reviews, that the show is not dirty enough. Like it still has a bit of that it's a little too clean in places. I think you see a lot of that in King's Landing. And the original show, even like Robert Baratheon and some of the other characters that were they were in the upper class of the city, there was still a bit of like grimy dirtiness to it. And this show is missing a little bit of that. So to have this specific opening and getting to see a little more of that grimy side of things,
nice.
I liked a lot. And I don't know if it's just a decision from the creators to make this part much cleaner, to differentiate itself from the common class or the lower class or the pirates, if that's kind of what they're going for, and they're just maybe it's a little on the nose. But I did notice it. We'll talk about it in a minute when we get to the scene where the king's talking to the 12-year-old girl.
Oh my gosh. Cringe.
Yeah. So here's Corlys, and he's going. This is that thing where he's still not being listened to. It could be interpreted specific ways if you want to go down the agenda road, but we'll stay away from it. I I think it's fine as far as the plot is concerned. They're setting up him going against the king, and one of the things that you see a lot in this episode is that is the case, that there's going to be a lot of tension between the two of them because the king makes a very specific decision at the end of this episode to not marry his daughter, but to marry Alicent instead, which we all knew was coming.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too, I thought it was a great line in here where he said, as a king, when he's talking to Lord Corlys, because Corlys wants him to go and fight the crabmen.
Yeah. And
he says, as king, I'm supposed to avoid war at all costs, basically, until it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of, war sucks being shown. And so I also forgot to mention last week, I thought there was another great line in the first episode where Otto Hightower says, the gods have yet to make a man who doesn't desire absolute power.
Yeah.
Thought that was a great line too. I forgot to mention that. And I want to get that in there.
Maybe it's foreshadowing. Maybe the Otto is telling, it's like what you say about others is what you mean about yourself.
Yep.
So
I thought Viserys I think he's another great actor in here. Who's
I like him a lot.
Nailing his role. And I like the agency they're giving him. And there's certain things I wish they would have done differently to make his character a little bit better, but I don't hate him.
Right. I think he is. You get to see how much he's struggling with his role as king.
They're humanizing him,
and that's great. It's very nice to see a character being human.
Yeah. And then it's also kind of crazy when it's like people used to live back in the day with just one person saying, "Hey, you have to do this."
Yep. So this is the scene that that we were referencing earlier. This shot is a pretty good indicator of this with all of these lit candles. You can see it in the background over here, and a lot of this is what's lighting this scene.
And they stayed in that for so long.
Yeah. That is, I listen, if I had to take the time to light all of those candles, I probably would have taken my time with this scene too, just to show it off.
Yeah.
I'm fine with most of it. I mean, it is a bit of a slow burn, and they're taking their time to set up their relationship, which these are the scenes with the two of them. They aren't the ones that I generally have a problem with, because this is a big plot point for later on in the episode. This comes pretty much full circle, and shows the departure of the two of them, like that wedge that's starting that will form between the two of them starts at the end of this episode, and I think that they did a pretty good job with this. It's nice to see character development. It's nice to see, even if it's not always stuff that people are like, well, I don't know how I felt specifically about it. It's nice to see the effort being put forward, which is really sad to say to a degree, but
the character agency, the detail, the care. But yeah, then we get to the scene of him, basically Lord Corlys and his wife,
Rhaenys
talks to him about, the first thing they talk about is the kingdom being seen as weak and the crabman and everything else we just told you that. But then the next thing is, rather than going to war, what Lord Corlys proposes and his wife, Rhaenys, is that he can marry their 12-year-old daughter in order to strengthen the kingdom.
Yeah.
And so that's I'm so glad he steered away from that.
Well, that's one of the coolest things about it, and we'll get to that scene in a second, but you can even see that, like, he's thinking about it. He understands what it would mean politically. But I think he also understands that it's cool to see him kind of have this conscience of being like, dude, she's 12.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And you see this, like, when it comes to that conversation later, how awkward it is. And Rhaenyra and him have this conversation about the two of them, about him needing to get remarried, and she's really supportive of that. And I think on a second viewing of this show, this episode might stand out a little bit more for me. As great, it's nice, because this is what I was talking about before. I think even before the show came out, one of my favorite things about the original series was people sitting around at tables talking to each other.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And this intrigue there, of what's going to happen. And I think too, it's just you get that scene of him walking with. Well, I kind of want to say on this scene now, but you get that scene of him walking with Lord Coriolis's daughter, and first off, her hair just stands out as fake.
Well, I was gonna say that. Oh, okay, we'll skip ahead for a second. Yeah, so this is the scene. Like Coriolis is watching them. I had a shot in here that I had seen. It's like you get like an up close, like you can see it here.
Yeah.
You can tell this is a wig.
Yep.
And it's like, guys, for all of the great detail that you have in this show, it's like you couldn't have gotten something better.
But
it's so obvious.
Yeah, it is obvious. She tells him, "Mother says I won't have to bet you until I'm 14."
Yeah, and he's like,
just
But here's the thing.
That's out the culture.
Yes, and I'm glad that they're not pulling punches as far as letting people understand what is at stake and what's going on. That they're not just like, oh no, or like they didn't age her up in order to make the conversation more palatable.
Yes.
It's very clear that this man who's probably in his 30s, 40s, may have to marry this 12-year-old girl for what is perceived as the best thing for the kingdom.
For their strength.
Yeah.
Now, going back a scene before
but don't
where
worry, it has to wait 2 years.
Yeah, right. And the maggots, do you think that someone's
poisoning him or screwing with him? I think that's what the implication is, absolutely.
Okay.
There's something going on with the Iron Throne that it seems to be doing that to him. And the thing is I think they want you to think it's Otto.
Yeah.
And I'm
but
not
it's
sure.
It's going to be someone else.
Yeah.
I know go ahead.
One of the Maesters is probably involved, but it's also possible that we haven't gotten to really know the character yet that is the mastermind behind it. I think they want you to think it's Otto. And if the story is set up in a way where they're going to have those, double crosses, triple crosses, that a lot of the political intrigue and the backstabbing that goes on, more than one character is going to be set up to take the fall. It's like, okay, we're going to kill the king off. We want to set Otto up as the person who did that. And then that means that Alicent may get some backfire for that because she's going to marry the king. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. But yeah, this is one of those scenes that we were talking about where Otto clearly has political goals. And he's been trying to manipulate the king into having a connection to Alicent since the first episode. And you can tell that, unlike the king, he doesn't care about his daughter in the same way. He sees her as essentially a tool to be used. Yeah. And as far as character writing is concerned, really appreciate it.
Yep. And I enjoy the fact that they're showing the Maesters in this as not being good.
Yeah, well, that was pretty much the same in the original series too. I sometimes it was a little too on the nose, where they were so gross sometimes that you're like, oh, these guys do not have the best intentions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. It's like you don't know. Everyone kind of has their personal agendas. You even see it with Rhaenys in this scene. She talks. What was that line that she used where she said that like,
the hard truth of it that no one wants to tell you is that you won't ever be a queen because the men don't want a woman as queen.
Yeah, they would. I think it's something like they'd rather see the kingdom burn than a woman sitting on the Iron Throne. Is that right?
Yep.
Thank you. You kind of jogged that for me. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Well,
which is fine.
Yeah, we didn't actually. I skipped there's a scene. Oh, here's this scene that I wanted to talk about real quick too. It's just setting up whatever's going on with the guy who won the tournament in the last episode. His name is slipping my mind, but
what's his name? Yeah. Now that you said that, messed me up. Anyway, now you see when you go to that shot of all the houses right there, all the knights that represent the houses.
Yeah.
If this was The Witcher, it would be brown, beige, tan,
not like blue, gold,
slightly gray,
orange, green. Here's some brown. There's some brown for you right there. This show definitely understands what a color palette is, and how to use it pretty well. So the other big thing, and we'll just kind of jump ahead a little bit, that of course, we were talking about this before, but when Damon shows
Kristen
up,
Cole, by the way, Sir Kristen Cole.
Kristen Cole, thank you. Yeah. Interested to see where that goes.
Yes.
There seems to be some possible love interest stuff going on with Rhaenyra, and in that a connection with the two of them. So we'll see what happens in the future with that. But Damon steals an egg for his not yet conceived son. Yeah. So, yeah, the scene's so interesting, dude. But I'm telling you, one of the best things about Matt Smith's character is that he is actually developed. They spent enough time with him in the last episode that you understand who he is. You understand that he's crazy enough to do something like this, that he has his reasons, that he's troubled, even if he does care about his family, which we'll see in a little bit.
But he does, and he's playing a game.
Yeah, and so this is kind of he's like, he is the second son, like you were saying. Like, he's the one that no one's paying attention to. It's sort of, he's got like what we would call like middle child syndrome, where it's like he constantly is doing these things to get people's attention.
And Otto hating him so much.
Yeah, it is
so
summer.
I know.
I love it, dude. I'm so biased towards this character. It's not even funny.
I know. And then kind of you see how she likes it when, he calls her. Well, I guess she didn't know at the time. I was perceiving it as her enjoying him standing up for her.
Uh-huh.
And then we find out later she didn't. But
he didn't.
And
she
then
didn't,
it's like
she
the
didn't
kid
like.
part.
Well, she didn't like that.
Yes.
That was the moment where she realized that he's manipulating and playing games, and maybe he doesn't care about her nearly as much as she thought.
Yep.
And they have that, I thought, was a pretty good conversation where it was like, you were supposed to like be my liberty, essentially. Like you were going to liberate me. Yeah.
From what? From fear.
Yep. Thought that was pretty good. I think her accent's a little all over the place. I don't know if you felt the same way. I was trying to figure out what she was going for.
I asked Kayla, I said, why is she French?
She was like French, Jamaican,
yeah,
maybe something else going on in there too. And I was like, guys, and it's gonna be real. I'm gonna be a little embarrassed if like that's actually her accent. Like she's not putting that on. It was odd.
Or if that's written in the canon or whatnot, that I'm not sure if people in the books had accents like that or not. They're written that way.
I don't know.
We're not making fun of her accent as a person, but just within the show, it throws you off because of everyone else.
Yeah,
again, it's not. I don't remember it being an accent like that being in Game of Thrones.
It stands.
Anybody really have an accent other than?
Well, they do. So when they go over to like Essos across the sea, obviously everyone over there's got a slightly different thing going on. They speak but hers is really thick, and it was just kind of hard for me to understand some of what she was saying. And I was just curious about that because I was like, maybe it's just me. Like, maybe it's my speakers. No. But yeah,
it stood out to me.
I generally like this scene. I know.
That scene where her dragon, Skyrax, comes through the clouds.
I like this. This looks good.
Yep.
Like Marvel.
That cloud part where the clouds like
they started parting.
Moving.
Yeah, it's parting, really good. Dude. It's really good.
And I enjoy the agency that the dragons, all the dragons we've seen so far, which is Daemon's dragon and Rhaenyra's dragon. I enjoy the agency that the dragons have and their own characteristics, and I want to see more of them and more interaction of them with their riders too.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny because one of the big selling points of this series is that, like, oh, we have all these dragons, and all the dragons are going to have these very distinct personalities. And I'm like, so far you have like the devil-looking dragon and the yellow dragon, and we've seen the fat dragon in previews. So I'm like, all right, when are we getting into that?
Yeah.
This, it's what I'm here for at this point. I want the development. I want the character development. I want the dragon development. But yeah, I think the shots look better. I actually think most of the dragon shots in this look better than they did in the previous episode.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
It's subtle, man, and not the whole thing isn't CG, and it's so wonderful.
It really is. And their interaction together, Daemon's and Rhaenyra's, is just it's
good.
Really good.
Yeah. I think, I think the second half of this episode is significantly better. It really starts to pick up, of course, like we were saying, as soon as Matt Smith comes in. It's a little funny because, the original Game of Thrones Dragonstone, it's a prominent set piece and mostly the last half of the series, and especially in season 7 and 8. And so it's one of those things where it's like, it kind of is still going back to those bad memories of like you're getting some of these same shots and you're like, oh great, this is the part where Daenerys makes bad decisions and where Varys decides that he doesn't remember what his character is, and just a lot of that comes into play. You have this conversation with the two of them. I can't remember the name of this guy. This is the guy that I think is manipulating everybody.
Lord No Name.
Yeah,
that seems.
I think he is going to play a more specific role in what's been going on than we know yet, because they haven't developed him yet. He's been in the show. There's a couple characters that are a part of the council that we haven't gotten to know very well, and so I do hope they get fleshed out. I hope we get to see a little bit more with them.
I'm really enjoying the other guy on the council that every time something's brought up with Daemon, he says, "Dear God." It's such a good comedic relief that's so simple and just like that. That's all you need.
Yeah. I appreciated their kind of like stuff together. I know some people have been saying that they're kind of like worried about her as a character and some of the decisions that she's making, and
like her fingernails too.
Well, that's Alicent.
I forgot that's Rhaenyra. My bad. I couldn't see her.
Oh yeah. Here she is. I don't know.
She seems to be. I think one of the criticisms I heard was that she seems to be kind of going like arc-wise, like Daenerys, as far as her in the early beginnings of Game of Thrones, where she has to make more difficult decisions along the way to become who she truly is.
Yeah, like maybe they're trying to like redo it. So I don't know, man. I mean, I just, it's kind of a wait and see. I think overall, I like the episode. I like that. Again, you get this moment with the king where he's basically like, "You're all I have left." Like he legitimately cares about her. And it was kind of our criticism in the previous episode that we wish he had been slightly more like that with his wife. Like it was there, it was clear he cared about her, but we wanted just that like extra little bit to drive the point home. But I think their interactions are great.
You brought up, and that he says, I'm going to, just because I'm marrying someone else doesn't mean you're not still my first heir.
Yeah,
like I made you heir for a reason.
Yeah, which I guess what'll probably because it feels very Game of Thrones that all this happens. She's been set up as the heir. He's gonna die, and there's gonna be a lot of people that are just like, nah. And
infighting, especially if Alicent has a baby boy.
Son. Yeah. Yup. Yeah.
Are we allowed to say that?
I don't know that for sure. That is the most logical way that the story's probably gonna head in.
I just meant, are we allowed to say baby boy?
Baby boy. Oh yeah, sure. Why not? So this is the scene where he decides to marry Alicent instead. She obviously didn't know about that. I love this look, and then her like, so it's like she's like, oh great, and then she kind of realizes what's going on because she doesn't have, like, Alicent doesn't have full agency in this.
Nope, she doesn't. She's under control, so to say.
I like that as far as the character is concerned, because like his smugness, dude, this look on his face is amazing. He's like, he knows, he's like, yup.
My plan's coming together.
Yeah, exactly.
I enjoy that too, because eventually she's going to have agency.
Yeah. Maybe.
Probably.
But that'll be an interesting thing to see too, whether it's like, is she going to be continued? Is there going to be continued manipulation on the part of Otto and maybe some other people who are basically like, your son is the rightful heir, therefore you should be like queen regent until he comes of age.
And it's going to be queen against queen, the battle of the queens.
The redhead versus the blonde.
Wasn't that an episode in season 7 of Game of Thrones, Battle of the Kings?
Well, you have like that, and then you have the whole thing where it's like Daenerys versus Cersei.
Oh yeah,
because like
that's
Cersei's
right.
technically the queen.
That is true.
And-
Battle of the Queens Part 2.
So I don't know if it was an actual episode. Man, there's so much of those later seasons that I don't remember.
I know.
You know, it just wiped them from my memory. So yeah, that's pretty much the episode. And then we have this final scene with Corliss where he's talking to somebody, and the camera swings around, bum bum bum. And this is I think this was a great moment between the two. I think you get to see his acting come out a lot more.
Yes. Great acting too.
You get him out of this specific setting where he's been a majority of the time that we've seen him.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to finally see sort of this like plot, and it's something that we were talking about in the previous episode, that his acting in the first episode was subtle, and I think it was done on purpose. And he's doing these little like glances, and he's got the subtle expressions on his face that show you how much he disagrees with everything that's going on in the council.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see all of that finally like culminate in the second episode, and for him to be like, all right, Daemon, let's team up. And it was a great moment of him saying what he said about Viserys. And sorry, there's so many.
And Daemon saying, "Only I can talk about my brother like that."
Yeah. Yep.
It was a good scene, and I enjoy too that they're giving Corlys this agency that so far isn't any type of. They're not giving so far, I would argue, any of the characters in here any type of trope that we typically see when it comes to shows recently, to where they're more viewed through a lens of activism rather than just authentic storytelling.
It would be really hard in this setting to do that without it being really annoying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We had little bits of it, there was like there's the stuff with like the women getting looked over, but
the
funny thing
getting looked over.
Yeah. But the funny thing about it, especially with the women in the show, is that there's actually an explanation for it.
Yes,
and then
to where it makes sense within the story.
It's around a 50, at least what they're saying in the show is that it's around a 50-50 chance that a woman having a pregnancy would lead to her death.
Yep.
So to have a queen who gets pregnant and there's a 50-50 chance that the queen is no longer going to be there, that's going to be a problem and cause a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. And so it's one of those things that's like, you may not like that that's the case. It's like, but if they've built that into the world, it makes a lot of sense why they wouldn't want to have a queen.
Yep. Exactly.
It just does. So, and then we have this final scene that I think is pretty great. I just like this as kind of like the teaser, and I really like the design of this guy. So you get, in the same way you kind of had it in the opening, they're really setting up just sort of like the creepy nature of this guy. It's really cool. I like this shot quite a bit too.
Yeah, that is a good shot. The crab, man.
So
too bad he doesn't have like the claws.
Yeah, that'd be pretty funny. But yeah, that's episode 2. I think it's pretty good.
It is.
It still
was a good episode.
Still got to see the rest of the season, man.
Yep.
It's too early to tell.
It yet.
Listen, yeah, just because you guys did good setup doesn't mean you're gonna get through to the end without it just completely belly flopping.
You hoodwinked me one time.
Yep. No, I'm not gonna get too excited. I'll admit though that I watched it the night it came out, I did not do that with the first episode.
Yep.
Was just like, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and watch it. It was like, I'm curious enough to see what's gonna happen with the next one, so I'm glad I did.
Same.
So yeah, I mean, I'm curious if you guys are watching it. Let us know. We'd love to hear from y'all and your opinions about the show and what you think of it so far. It's like, are you digging it? Are you not? Like, what's going on? I've heard some people say that they thought this episode was pretty boring.
I've heard that too,
and we talked about that.
And it's subjective.
Yeah, like being like, well, I thought it was boring. It's like, okay, fair.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the exposition.
Yeah.
I understand that it's a slow burn. I do think at times it is slow, but I'm going to be intrigued because I can tell the care that was put into the show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's nice to see that.